Courageously creative self-promotion. How to get paid to speak. One of the most difficult things for most people to do is to promote themselves. It's a lot easier to market and sell a product when the product is something tangible, something impersonal like a car or a computer or a bike. But when the product is you, your skills and talents and personal qualities like diligence or creativity or the ability to inspire people with a speech or a story, that's when it gets tricky. But the ability to promote yourself, to market yourself, to get people to notice you and recognize your value, that self-promotional ability is essential. And in this episode of the Storytelling That Sticks for Business and Life podcast, I want to give you some examples of how to promote yourself, how to get to yes, so to speak, so you can get paid to speak or to get the promotion you deserve or the job you want. So here are a couple of assumptions that need to be made right up front, okay? And the first one is that you believe in yourself. You know that if given the opportunity, you can deliver. You can be successful. And the second assumption is that you have something of value to market and sell, a product or service or talent or skill that people are willing to pay for. And for the purposes of this podcast, that product may be a speech with a powerful story or two inside of it. And the final assumption is that you're ready, willing, and able to dedicate the time and energy to figuring out what you need to do and who you need to get in front of to achieve your goals, to get from where you are to where you want to be. And also that you're willing and able to invest some money along the way. Now, for those of you that are just dropping in for the first time, who just found this podcast because you're interested in learning more about storytelling and business, welcome. I'm your host and story coach, Doug Stevenson. I help people craft and deliver their stories, their high-value speeches and TED Talks through virtual coaching. So if you're just dropping in for the first time, welcome. But I also want to encourage you to go back to the first episodes and listen to them in sequence. A lot of what I reference in each episode is covered in earlier episodes. Now, before I tell you my story, I want you to think about what you want and what's stopping you from getting it. Is it a different job, a raise or a promotion? Is it giving a TED Talk? Or how about getting paid to speak? What do you want that you don't have right now? And how badly do you want it? And how long are you willing to sit back and want it without doing anything to get it? The only way you can get it without waiting forever for someone else to offer it to you is to go after it. And that means you have to promote yourself, in essence, to sell yourself. And that's something that I know a lot about because I've been promoting myself since I was a 19-year-old kid in Chicago. But I also know that I'm weird in that respect because I talk to people all the time who hate the idea of having to promote themselves, to sell themselves, to talk about themselves, because they feel like people will think they're bragging or arrogant. When the truth is, if you're good at something, if you have a skill or a talent, and the people around you aren't rewarding you for that, you have to seek out the people who will recognize your skill or talent and reward you for it. My self-promotion story starts when I decided that I was going to be a movie star, and that after careful consideration, I realized that movie stars don't need a college degree. So I dropped out of college after my freshman year and started taking acting classes. Well, that led to me doing a couple of plays, including the world premiere production of the musical Grease in Chicago, where I got to be the first Danny Zuko. I mean, the first Danny Zuko ever. That was pretty cool. Well, I left Chicago and I hitchhiked to Hollywood because I was broke. I didn't have any money, where I discovered that you had to be proactive if you wanted anyone to notice you, much less hire you. And one of my first memories of doing something proactive, something to promote myself, was when I learned that you couldn't even get an audition for anything on TV or in the movies without a theatrical agent. So I got busy. I got my hands on a list of agents and I started calling them on the phone, just cold calling. And they all shut me down and hung up on me. It turns out that if you don't have a referral or a recommendation from someone they know, they won't even talk to you. It's true that it's all about who you know. Well, I didn't know anyone. I was a nobody, but I believed in myself. So one day I said to myself, screw this, screw this. And I got in my car and I started driving around Beverly Hills and Hollywood and the San Fernando Valley, going door to door from agent to agent. And they all said the same thing when I walked in the door. No referral, no luck. And they weren't very nice about it most of the time. So time after time, I got back in my car and drove to the next agent. One after another, they all told me to go away. It was tough. And they were rude, really condescending. So after a day of rejection, I went home feeling like crap. But a couple of days later, I got back out there and tried again. And then one time, after 4 or 5 agents said no, I knocked on a door and walked into an agent's office, and it was a very small agency, just a secretary and an agent. And I introduced myself to the secretary, and to my surprise, she turned in her chair towards the adjoining room, and in a raised voice, she said, "Hey, David, there's a young actor here. Do you want to talk to him?" And he shouted back, "Sure, send him in." So we sat there and talked, and he asked me some questions. And I told him my story about hitchhiking from Chicago and being Danny Zuko in Greece and all the plays I'd done. And I walked out of that office 30 minutes later into the sunshine on San Vicente Boulevard, and I had an agent. I had an agent. Lesson number 1 in self-promotion: keep asking until someone says yes. Keep asking until someone says yes. You're going to get a lot of no's. You just have to keep asking until someone says yes. Sometimes it means you have to get out of your home or office and go after it, chase after it. Get off the internet if necessary, and surprise someone by showing up at their office. Go where the person you need to choose you is. Go from door to door, office to office. Just show up. Bring a box of bagels. That may even mean you get on a plane and fly to where they are. But you know what? I've found that people, at least the right people, respect people who show initiative, who show boldness. So keep asking until someone says yes. Now, let's tie this back to getting paid to speak for a moment, becoming a professional speaker. In the beginning of my speaking career, I spoke anywhere I could: Rotary clubs, Lion clubs, service clubs, networking groups, whatever. One thing led to another. And the more I spoke, the more I learned about the people who hire speakers, the decision makers, like association executives, state and national association executives, decision makers. Well, they have annual meetings where they hire speakers. So I did something innovative. I called the office of the Colorado Society of Association Executives. And instead of asking to talk to the person that hires speakers for their events, which I learned would just get me a brush off, I asked if I could volunteer to be on the education committee. Well, the woman who answered the phone, the woman on the other end of the phone, was stunned. She said no one had ever called her office asking to volunteer to be on a committee. And I told her that I was a speaker and that I knew lots of speakers, and that would make me an asset to the committee. And voila, I was in. Well, a couple of weeks later, there I was sitting in a conference room with 6 association executives. I was at the table with decision makers, which led them to asking me to be a speaker at one of their monthly meetings, which led to a number of association executives hiring me to speak at their conferences. That's how I got some of my first paid speeches, which I leveraged into other paid speeches with other association executives. Lesson number 2 in self-promotion: come in through the side door. I've used this technique a number of times over the years because sometimes coming in the front door doesn't always work. And what I mean by the front door is calling and asking to speak to the person who hires speakers, you get shut down or rejected or told to come back later or never. And I'm not the kind of guy that takes no for an answer easily. So if you're not having any luck with a traditional approach, which I call the front door, come in through the side door. And for me, the side door was volunteering to be on a committee and being able to sit at the table with the people who could make a decision to hire me. Sometimes when you come in through the front door, you're shut down by someone who has no power to say yes, a receptionist or a gatekeeper. You got to find a way to get around them. And that's what I call the side door approach. Now, the first rule of getting paid to speak is they have a speech that someone is willing to pay for. But when they see it, they're going to want it. So whenever I had a speech in front of 300 people or so, I hired a videographer to shoot it so I could create my first speaker demo, which gave me a marketing tool to show to other potential customers. Now, I need to remind you of something that I mentioned earlier. Before you can get paid to speak, you need to make a lot of down payments on future returns. And by that, I mean you have to spend money to make money. I had to drive an hour back and forth from Colorado Springs to Denver twice a month to attend the association meetings and to go to the National Speakers Association meetings up in Denver. I had to pay for the videographers to shoot and edit the demo videos. But the money I spent early on was a down payment that paid off 100 times over time. Now, in the beginning, the product that I was marketing and selling was a speech called The Positive Power of Change. I was a change keynote speaker. And I got booked to deliver that keynote often enough to get some good testimonials and to record some decent video. And that's when I learned about speakers bureaus. They're basically agents for keynote speakers. And it became pretty clear to me that I could either promote myself to one client after another in Colorado, a really slow process with limited results, or I could market and promote myself to speakers bureaus who had lots of clients all over the United States. Well, I figured if I can get an agent in Hollywood, I could get speakers bureaus to represent me. The problem was the speakers bureaus were all over the country, all over the United States. There was only one in Colorado, and she didn't seem too interested in me. So I started cold calling 5 or so bureaus a day, and they all said the same thing. If you don't come recommended by someone we know, we can't talk to you. Sound familiar? It turns out that new speakers are a lot like new actors in Hollywood. They're a dime a dozen. But I kept smiling and dialing, as my friend Leanne Tiemann said in my interview with her. And lo and behold, one day, a bureau owner named Carol took the time to talk to me. I mean, we spent like a half hour on the phone. She really spent some time listening to me and where I was at and what I had to offer. And she agreed to look at my video. So I sent her my video and my marketing materials. And when I followed up with her, she told me that I showed promise, but that I wasn't really ready yet. She said I needed more experience before she could represent me and send me out to her clients. And this is where I put on my courageously creative marketing hat and started coming up with innovative ways to stay in touch with her. They say that marketing is about multiple impressions, which meant that I had to find ways to keep myself in front of her without bugging her with phone calls. So here's a couple of things that I did. The following spring, I guess it was maybe April, I bought some gardening gloves and gardening seed packets, and sent them to her with a note saying that I was going to keep planting seeds with her until they sprouted into an agreement for her to represent me. Well, she liked that. She thought that was fun. Well, later on, I also did some research into some nice restaurants in her city. And I bought her a gift certificate for $50 and sent it to her as a thank you for taking the time to talk to me, to counsel me, to give me advice. All the while, I kept giving speeches, collecting testimonials, and creating new videos and sending them to her. And finally, after something like 2 years, I think it was, she told me she'd watched my latest video and she felt that I was ready. Ta-da! And here's the kicker. She said, and these are her words exactly, "Your streaking story, Doug, it is gold. I can sell that." And she did. She was the first bureau to represent me. She got me booked at least 30 times all over the Midwest. And I leveraged my connection with her by asking her to recommend me to another bureau. And that led to more bureaus and more bookings and a full-on professional speaking career. Lesson number 3, be courageously creative in your self-promotion. Don't be afraid to do the kind of things that other people won't do. Be courageously creative. So about 4 years in, I was speaking all over the United States. And I wanted to expand my range. I wanted to speak internationally. And after hearing from a fellow speaker about the American Society for Training and Development, it's now known as ATD, I found out that this was an international association of trainers, training directors, and chief learning officers from all over the world. The people responsible for professional development training. Over 12,000 people attend these conferences. So I figured out how to submit a proposal to speak, to do a breakout session for free, mind you, for free. And year after year, my proposals were rejected. Are you beginning to see a theme here? Rejection after rejection. Oh my gosh. And by this time, Deborah and I had purchased a trade show booth setup. We're starting to do trade shows as a way to get into different conferences. And one of them was the ASTD conference. But I still wasn't being chosen to speak on the main program. And then we got this notification. The ASTD people decided to offer trade show participants the option of paying an additional fee to give a 30-minute presentation in the trade show area. So, of course, I signed up and paid my fee. And when the time came for me to give my speech at 9 a.m. in the morning, in the back corner of the Orlando Convention Center, mind you, I was all set up and ready to go, all excited and ready to go, but only 10 people were there. So I stood there for a minute and I decided to wait, a little while to see if anyone else was going to show up. And all of a sudden, 100 people started walking and running towards me because someone in the conference the day before had told them about me and that they really needed to see me in action, to see me in the trade show area. Well, I have no idea who that woman was, but I thank her to this day. So now I had 100 people sitting in folded chairs waiting for me to start. And I was standing there on the floor in front of them. There was no raised platform. And I knew that if I told my streaking story standing on the floor, it wouldn't work because it's a very visual story. It's a performance. So I got up on top of a 6-foot table and I did my entire presentation standing on a 6-foot table. Well, a woman came up to me afterward and asked me if I'd be willing to come to Copenhagen to give my speech. And of course, I said yes. And here's the bonus. In addition to getting hired to do my first international booking in Copenhagen, someone from ASTD happened to be making the rounds in the trade show. And she saw that I had attracted over 100 people, which was unheard of in a trade show presentation. And the next year, my proposal was accepted. I guess I had an in with ASTD. And from there, I went on to become one of their top speakers year after year, to the point that one time, and this was pretty weird, I was given an early morning speaking slot on the last day of the 5-day conference, 8:30 a.m., and 900 people showed up. Once again, I came in through the side door, through the trade show door. And I want you to get this because I talked about spending money, making down payments on your future success. I had to pay my own way to speak at ASTD, hotels, airfare, meals, the whole thing, trade show booth. But it paid off. It's one of the smartest down payments I ever made for my speaking career. People from all over the world came to my sessions. People from multiple industries. I got hired to do keynotes and training all over the world. And why? Why? Because it all goes back to the fact that I believed in myself and knew that if given the opportunity, people would like what they'd see, that I had something of value that people would pay for. And that's how you get paid to speak and become a professional speaker. And that's how you get a better job, get the promotion you deserve, get to the next level, whatever that means to you. So here's lesson number 4. Invest in yourself. Make down payments. You have to spend money to make money. And I'm just going to jump right here to lesson number 5 because it is crucial. Network with people who believe in you, support you, and encourage you. You can't move forward if someone close to you is holding you back. You have to have a partner or network of friends who are like-minded, who will back you up when you get discouraged, because rejection is just part of the process. Oh my gosh, I have been rejected 1,000 times at least. People will tell you no, and that's okay as long as the person telling you no isn't the person you come home to. I believed in myself, but so did my wife, Deborah. She supported me every step of the way. She helped me, provided the love and support that I needed to keep going, to keep investing, to keep pushing. So let's review. Okay? Let's review. Lesson number 1, keep asking until someone says yes. Lesson number 2, come in through the side door. Lesson number 3, be courageously creative. And lesson number 4, invest in yourself. Invest in yourself, make down payments. And finally, lesson number 5, network with people who believe in you and support you. As they say at the beginning of every Mission Impossible movie, and I love those movies, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to believe in yourself. Enough to put yourself out there, to promote yourself. Because I can tell you at the end of the day, when you hear the word yes, the victory will be oh so sweet. I hope you'll take what you've learned today and do something with it. Don't just take a lot of notes and sit there and think about it for the next 6 months. Develop a plan of action and then get busy. Figure out what you want, what you need to do to get there, and who you need to talk to. I found that most people respect people who take bold, decisive action. They respect initiative. So the next step is up to you. There is someone out there waiting to say yes. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to find them and ask them to say yes. Now, if you feel that you learned something valuable today, something that you can use that will make your stories stick, stories that make you and your business memorable, marketable, and monetizable, there are 3 things I'd like you to do. First, click on the follow or subscribe button. Subscribe. Second, share this podcast with your friends and coworkers. Put it out there on your mailing list. And third, connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where I do most of my social media. And when you're ready to get serious and make some serious money with your stories, with your speeches, with your TED Talks, let's schedule your free 30-minute coaching session where we can get to know each other and see if we're a good fit. And as always, I'd love to hear from you with your questions and comments. Let me know that you're out there listening and learning. You can send an email to my office with your questions, comments, and suggestions to Deborah at DougStevenson.com. That's Deborah, Deborah, at DougStevenson.com. And she'll schedule your free 30-minute coaching session as well. Hey, thanks again for listening. Until the next episode, I'm Doug Stevenson.